Hello everybody, this is Jonathan and today I'll be talking about the central processing unit, which is the brain of the computer. Okay, let's get started. So the CPU companies that makes processors are Intel, AMD, and now Nvidia is starting to make their own CPUs. But the most popular companies that do make CPUs are Intel and AMD. AMD is faster and cheaper than Intel, whereas Intel is more popular and has better support. Intel and AMD motherboards are different and will not support each other. Intel motherboards won't work with AMD. What is the CPU? The purpose of having a CPU is to process information. The CPU is a hardware that does all the processing. For example, it does all the calculations, sorting and searching. With tasks on a computer, for example, making a PowerPoint document, the CPU will process the data we use. The CPU is made of three components: the control unit, the intermediate access store, and the arithmetic and logic unit. Computers only knows ones and zeros, 1010 and 1010. This is the language that the processor can understand. So when you write a program, it gets compiled into binary, which is what ones and zeros are, for the computer to understand. Okay, the control unit. The control unit will control the flow of the data in your system. The control unit will control and communicate between the hardware attached to a computer. It will control the input and output of data, check that the signals have been sent successfully, and make sure that the data goes to the right place. Input, data going to the system, for example a keyboard. So the typing on a keyboard, the data goes into your PC. Output, data going out of a system, for example printers. So when you're trying to print something out, it will have a physical copy of your document. Intermediate access store. The intermediate access store job is to hold all the data and the programs that is currently being in use. When you open your calculator software, then the data the program will be stored there as is currently being used. So yeah. Arithmetic and logic unit. The arithmetic and logic unit is used to perform maths and logical operations. Every task you do on the computer carries out is completed here. The ALU operations fall into two parts: maths, which is 10 plus 10 equals to 20. That's what the computer does, is calculate all the mathematics. It also does the logical operations. So if 3 is larger than 9, then do something else. For example, CPU speed. What makes a processor faster? CPU speed. The computer speed is mostly caused by the central processing unit. There are three factors that can affect the performance of a processor when it tries to carry out instructions. Its clock speed, its cores, and its cache. The processor can run one instruction at a time, which allows you to run more than one task. Is the clock speed. This is controlled by a clock. With every tick, the CPU fetches and run one instruction. The speed is measured in cycles per second, and one cycle per second is 1 Hz. This means that a processor with a clock speed of 2 GHz can carry out 2,000 instructions a second. The higher the clock speed, the faster instructions will be processed. So as you guys can see, 1 GHz is slower, 2 GHz is faster, and 3 GHz is a lot faster than 2 GHz. Cores. The CPU cores is like having more than one processor. So if a PC has 4 cores, then it can carry out 4 instructions at the same time. Most of today's technology has from 2 to 7 cores, whereas servers could range even higher. Even though I do believe that majority of servers only has like 7 cores, whereas a desktop PC has like 4 cores majority of the time, and it can go up to like 8 cores. So yeah, this is how much we have advanced. Cache. The cache is a small block of memory that is in the processor. It will save the common instructions and allow them to run faster. The bigger the cache, the more common instructions can be saved. there and will run faster. Transistors in a CPU are tiny electronic components that act as switches, controlling the flow of electricity in a circuit. The transistors are used as building blocks, creating logic gates and memory cells, which are what really making the processor work. How do transitions work in a CPU? The CPU transition work by controlling the flow of electricity. Transistors can perform Boolean logic, for example, and can store binary data in memory. How many transistors are there in a CPU? This depends on the generation of the CPU, and when it was developed, they can range from million to billions of transistors. The fetch execute cycle. What is the fetch execute cycle? The basic operation of a computer is called the fetch execute cycle. The CPU is made to understand a set of instructions. It will get the instructions from the main memory and then run them. This is done repeatedly until the computer shuts down. The steps. The CPU will need to get the instructions one at a time from the main memory into the registers. The CPU decodes the instructions. The CPU executes instructions. Registers are the component that stores the data in instructions for fast processing. Overclocking. What is overclocking? Overclocking is when you make your hardware faster than when you have gotten it from the shop. This makes the processor a lot faster. The advantage is that if it's slow, then you could overclock it and it will run faster than it did before. This includes increasing the clock speed. Advantages and disadvantages of overclocking. So for advantages is that you're going to have a much faster CPU without having to buy a new one. Will be helping with the CPU shortage, and it's loads of fun to play around with. The disadvantage is that we're going to lose warranty. If we don't have a good heatsink, it could cause overheating problems. CPU will have a lower life span than if it was as not being overclocked. We will make a mistake and the CPU will die or won't be able to boot until we reset for BIOS settings. We'll need to learn how to put a PC to overclock, so that way we can replace your hardware that you have overclocked too much. What predictions do we have on the future of the CPU? Every 2 years, the transistors on the CPU will double. This is something that has been going on for a while. Every 2 years, the transistors will double. This makes the processor faster. I predict that by 2040, a processor will have 6 trillion of transistors. This is higher than a trillion. This means that it will be 1,000 times faster than our CPU right now. The CPU will have more cores. Server CPUs already has 192 cores, mostly in bigger companies like Microsoft and Google. So these are like really powerful servers. The more the CPU has, the more tasks can be done at the same time. So my prediction is that video games are getting more and more intensive every year, meaning that desktop PCs by 2030 will have at least 10 cores. By 2040, a server CPU will start to have over 400 cores, but will still be power efficient. Higher clock speed. The higher the clock speed, the higher the process speed will be to process information. At the moment, most computers support 2 to 5 GHz on clock speeds. My prediction is that we will, by 2030, start seeing 20 GHz to 40 GHz for servers, and for desktop would be 20 GHz. Computers cheaper as it gets more powerful. The cost of a CPU will be cheaper and a lot more powerful for everyone. This means that more money could be saved for a better GPU and other hardware. It has been reported on many reports that CPUs will be cheaper as in cost. 2 CPUs and a motherboard. Having 2 CPUs will double for cores, the clock speed, and share resources. Some of the boards has 2 to 4 CPU sockets, but mostly for servers. A desktop PC in 2030 might be able to support 2 CPUs in one PC, but most likely for people that need to do high-end tasks, for example, game development to video editing. Disadvantages to future predictions. Anything that could happen in the future, for example, delay of a project, or it could be some form of weather issues, or it could be because we might have a bomb happening. Wars happens all the time. And if we have gotten a war happening in countries that develop the processor, for example China, which produces like everything, if China ends up having sanctions on us, or if it's having conflicts with China, then that could definitely cause delays in having a more powerful processors. Any questions? Thanks for reading and listening to the PowerPoint. So if you guys have any questions, please say so, and I'd be happy to answer them. This is just my references. Thanks so much for watching, and bye bye.